Shrimp Fra Diavolo is one of the easiest to make dishes out there, making it perfect when looking for a quick, delicious meal to serve up to family and friends. This American-Italian classic is zesty marinated cooked shrimp in a tasty, simple to prepare, chunky tomato sauce, and it's amazing served as is. But when you turn it into a pasta, it's just, it's so good. We are gonna start off by knocking out some prep. Sound good? Let's cook. For these deviled shrimp, I have 2 pounds of fresh 2125 shrimp. Now the 2125 represent how many shrimp make up 1 pound. You can absolutely use larger shrimp like 1620s, 1315s, or U12 or larger. You can also use shrimp that is frozen but is now thawed. When purchasing shrimp, you want to make sure they are gray to light pink in color and are firm and are not slimy or have any bad odor. These are shell on and deveined. I love these because they're easy to prep. To do so, hold the shrimp in one hand, then firmly pinch together the legs at the front end of the shrimp, and then wrap your fingers around the shrimp, still pinching the legs, and that part will come right off. We're going to do the same process for that back part of the shrimp, but keeping the tail on. Now, I like to keep the tail on for aesthetics and because it will give a more shrimpy flavor to our sauce, which is what I want. You can, however, remove it if you'd like. Repeat the process until all the shrimp have been peeled. Now, what I usually like to do is transfer it over to a colander and then rinse it well under cold water to get any loose shells out of there or any veins that have not come out of the shrimp. Then just keep them in the colander and briefly set them to the side in a bowl. Now for some quick prep. I have 2 fresh Fresno peppers. Some other options would be a ½ teaspoon of crushed red pepper flakes, 1 teaspoon of Aleppo pepper flakes, or even some Calabrian chilies. For these Fresno peppers, I'm going to slice off the stem end, slice them in half, and then carve out most of the pith. I'm going to leave a little bit in there because that's where the heat comes from, and I want this to have a little spice to it. Now, Fresno peppers are in between 2,500 and 10,000 on the Scoville meter. For a comparison, a jalapeno is between 2,000 and 8,000, so these would actually swap out very well if you can only find jalapenos. We are just going to small dice these and briefly set them to the side. Let's bring that shrimp back out. I'm going to transfer to a larger bowl. Then using some paper towels, I'm going to pat them dry very well on all sides. Doing this process will help ensure our marinade sticks to it a little bit better and will help in the searing process. Remember, moisture is always the enemy of a good pan sear. Once they are dry, we're going to add in our diced Fresno peppers along with some coarse salt. This is about a teaspoon or so. Then I'm going to drizzle in 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. Using a rubber spatula, let's mix everything to combine to marry those flavors together. And Comies, a couple things. I like comfortably spicy food. I hate it when my mouth is on fire and that's all that I can taste. But if heat is your life, what you should do is roughly chop up that leftover pith and seeds and add it right to this marinade. You'll love it. The other thing, shrimp shells. Don't throw those away. Pop them in a plastic bag and put them in the freezer until you have enough to make shrimp bisque. And at that point, it's practically free. You're welcome. Once the marinade is mixed in with the shrimp, we're just going to set them to the side uncovered at room temperature for about 10 to 15 minutes, which will give us perfect time for some more prep. I have 1 large yellow onion. You could use a red, white, or sweet onion as well. All I need is a quarter of this. So I'm going to slice off the end, slice in half, peel it, and then I'm going to thinly julienne half of this half of a yellow onion. Set that to the side, and then next I have 5 large garlic cloves. You could finely mince them, but I'm going to thinly slice them using a chef knife. You could also use a mandolin to do this. I want some bigger, robust garlic flavors, and this is going to help me get there. Doing this also reminds me of Ray Liotta when he plays Henry Hill in Goodfellas, when he's slicing the garlic really thin while in jail and talks about how it liquefies in the oil, and that it's a really good sauce. Love that movie. Let's set those to the side. Then to prep up our tomatoes, I have 1 28-ounce can of San Marzano tomatoes. When purchasing them, you want to make sure they say DOP on the front, which means protected designation of origin and authenticates that these are indeed San Marzano tomatoes. Time to page Dr. Chef Parisi to put the glove on. Then I'm just going to hand crush these in a bowl to help break up those tomatoes into the juice, just releasing all that delicious flavor. And there's really no perfect process here. I just want to make sure the tomatoes are crushed. There's larger chunks, no problem. And remember, whole peeled, crushed, or even diced tomatoes will absolutely work for this. I like San Marzanos for their flavor. And for our last thing to prep up, I have 7 to 8 stems with leaves of fresh Italian flat leaf parsley. What I usually do is roll this up as tightly as I can and then slice and then finely mince. Now I leave the stems on because there's so much flavor in the stems and there's no reason to waste these. And at this stage, our mise en place, or everything in its place, is finished, which will help make the cooking process much more seamless. And now let's bring our marinated shrimp to the cooktop. I have a 3.5 quart stainless steel saucepan. You could absolutely use a large stainless steel or nonstick skillet here as well. We're gonna add in 3 tablespoons of olive oil and then turn the heat up to medium and let it sit for about 45 seconds to heat up. Then I'm going to add the shrimp to the pan and then using a wooden spoon, of course it's a wooden spoon, we're making Italian food here, forget about it. We're going to spread it around all over the pan to cover as much surface area as possible to try and get maybe a baby sear. If we don't, no problem. I just want to make sure it cooks evenly. Now we are going to saute this for a total of about 1 minute. That is it. Shrimp can go from delicious to a tough, chewy mess in a very tight C and shape in a matter of seconds. So we want to slightly undercook these. Even if there's a little bit of gray on the shrimp, it's no problem. We will continue the cooking process when our sauce is done. These look fantastic. Let's set them to the side on a plate. We're going to return that pan right to the burner and add in 1 tablespoon more of olive oil along with our julienne onions. Once they're in there, I'm going from medium heat down to low medium heat. We are going to cook these while frequently stirring for between 10 and 12 minutes to try to release as much of that caramelization flavor as possible to make this sauce incredibly flavorful. And for a little chef tip here, if you notice some areas that are darkening a little bit too quick, just add in a tablespoon or 2 of water to help release that fond when it's still delicious and not scorched and bitter, which can absolutely ruin the sauce. Doing this will just further enhance the flavor of this dish. And honestly, try to have a little fun while cooking, or else it's looked at as a total chore. Nobody wants that. In addition, try things throughout the process. Why not taste one of these caramelized onions? See exactly where it's at, what it's supposed to taste like. I promise you, when you put these things into practice, you'll appreciate and start to love the cooking life cycle a whole lot more. And these have been cooking for about 11 or 12 minutes. They're nice and browned up and tender. This is exactly what I want. I'm next adding in our garlic cloves. We are going to stir these in. And I always say once you can smell garlic, it's finished, which only takes in between 30 and 45 seconds. That is it. Now I'm going to deglaze with 1 cup of dry white wine. You could use Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Grigio. I'm using a Piccolo Fiore, which is a white blend combination. And then I'm immediately turning the heat up to medium while constantly stirring. And don't lie, you do this too. Everyone stirs in one hand and puts their hand on the hip in the other. I promise you, you do this. You just don't realize it. Now, when stirring, be sure to scrape the bottom of the pan. That's where all that fond, all that delicious flavor is on the bottom. Those brown little nummies on there. Yes, you want that released into the sauce. We're cooking this to au sec or almost gone. There should be about a tablespoon or 2 remaining. That is it. Fantastic. Now let's add in our crushed tomatoes. And I don't know about you, but I always have a random 1 tomato or 8 to 10 cherry tomatoes left over. This is just perfect time to use it up. No, it's not in the original recipe, but it's tomatoes. It doesn't hurt, it can only help. So I'm just gonna quarter these up and add them right to the pot, along with a ½ teaspoon of crushed red pepper flakes, then 2 teaspoons of dry oregano. I just happen to have one of these fancy dried oreganos still on the stem. And remember, we start with dry herbs, we finish with fresh. The dry herbs need to reconstitute to be able to release all their flavors. We're gonna cook this for a total of 4 to 5 minutes. Let those flavors marry. Then we're gonna season it with coarse salt and fresh cracked black pepper. Let's give it a stir. Be sure to taste it. What else does it need? Does it need more salt, pepper, oregano? You be the judge here. Then once it's to that perfect flavor consistency, to finish this up, you can add in the shrimp and our parsley, stir it in. Boom, Shrimp Fra Diavolo. But I promised you pasta. So we are going to keep this over low heat, go over to a large pot of boiling water. We are going to add enough coarse salt so that it's as salty as the ocean to infuse those flavors to season up our pasta. Next, I'm adding in 1 pound of linguine. You could use dry pasta, fresh pasta. You be the judge. I'm using dry pasta because I need a little bit more time, and I'll explain why in a second. This is going to take in between 8 and 10 minutes to cook to become right before al dente or slightly firm but not crunchy. I like to constantly come back and move the pasta around to make sure nothing's sticking. Now, this is why I needed that extra time because fresh pasta cooks too quick. With about 2 minutes left in the pasta cooking process, I'm going to add our shrimp back to our sauce. Then I'm going to add in our finely minced fresh parsley. We're just going to cook this over low heat for 2 minutes. Not only is this going to bring our shrimp up to temperature, it's also going to finish cooking them. And if you remember, this is why they were slightly underdone when I pulled them out of the pan in the first place, so that they're going to be now perfectly cooked in the end. Once our pasta is finished, let's drain it and add it right to the pot with our sauce. Then we're going to take a ladle full or about a half cup full of that hot pasta water. We're going to add it to the pan with the sauce, pasta, and shrimp, and then using some tongs or a spoon, fold the ingredients together until all the pasta has been coated in the sauce. And that's why it's so important to cook your pasta correctly and right before al dente, because it will continue to cook. But by the time you take this first bite, it should be perfect. That is why I always say simplicity equals elegance. Few ingredients, absolutely delicious. That's why these fundamental classic cooking techniques makes just incredible food and always the best memories. That is why I do this. I want to see my family and friends smile. I want those conversations around the table. They last a lifetime. I love that. All right, let me show you how I plate this up. I think this looks absolutely gorgeous right in the pan, so I'm going to serve it as is with an extra garnish of fresh minced parsley, and you could also add in some fresh basil or oregano if you like, and then a little bit more crushed red pepper flakes. Now, you can also serve this deviled shrimp or shrimp fra diavolo in a bowl in the same way. Add your pasta to the bowl, top off with shrimp, herbs, and pepper flakes. Look, I am not a 30-minute meal guy. I'm just not. But if you give me a few extra minutes, we can make some really good food together. I think if you try this, you, your family, and friends are really going to dig it. And if you just love pastas, check out my 3 Italian pastas. Oh, creamy, oily, all that deliciousness. I've got a great recipe video. See you on there.